Good evening, and once again, the world is learning just how easy it is to get under the skin of the most powerful man on earth. Today, after storming out of a meeting on infrastructure, what could have been a hugely popular issue for him, President Trump stepped outside and unloaded on live television. And no, that's not really normal, not even by the dim lights of these not normal times. If you didn't see it when it happened, you'll want to watch it now. And remember, to make it happen, all Nancy Pelosi had to do was say what she and others have been saying repeatedly for months.
Hello, everyone. Carl here. Okay, let's dive into it. The most concrete example comes from Judge Juan Machan in Trump's New York hush money case. Trump kept telling reporters and supporters that the gag order prevented him from testifying. He claimed he wanted to take the stand, but the judge wouldn't let him because of that unfair gag order. That was completely false. The gag order only restricted attacks on witnesses, jurors, and court staff. It had absolutely nothing to do with Trump's right to testify.
We believe that no one is above the law, including the President of the United States, and we believe that the President of the United States is engaged in a cover-up, and that was the nature of the meeting.
Well, that was at 10 a.m. Eastern time this morning. From there, she headed to the White House for an 11:15 meeting with the president on infrastructure, spending something nearly every lawmaker likes, though some obviously differ on how to pay for it. The president showed up 15 minutes late, then complained for several minutes about what Speaker Pelosi said.
So Judge Merchan corrected him directly in open court. With Trump sitting there, the judge explained that Trump had the absolute right to take the stand, that nothing in the gag order prevented that Trump was misrepresenting what the order actually said, and the judge had to do this multiple times because Trump kept repeating the lie. This is documented.
Before President Trump bulldozed a third of the White House last week, he had already paved over one of its most beautiful and iconic places, the White House Rose Garden. This summer, President Trump poured concrete over the Rose Garden at the White House in order to create this, what he calls the Rose Garden Club. It's basically a fast food restaurant patio with garish yellow umbrellas he had shipped up from his house in Florida to make it look like the assistant manager hasn't arrived yet to really set the place up. Look at that. That used to be the Rose Garden. Destroying the White House Rose Garden, literally paving it, cost nearly $2 million.
It's in court transcripts. Legal reporters covered it. A judge directly contradicted a false public claim from a defendant, which is unusual. Judges typically don't engage with what defendants say outside court, but Merchant felt compelled because Trump's lie was so egregious and so potentially damaging to public understanding of the trial. Then there are the contempt findings. Judge Merchan held Trump in contempt at least 10 times for violating the gag order, and in those contempt orders, the judge described Trump's social media posts as incendiary untruths. That's specific legal language. Incendiary means inflammatory, designed to provoke anger or violence. Once means false statements. So the judge was formally finding that Trump's statements were both false and dangerous. Each contempt finding imposed fines, and Merchant explicitly warned that continued violations would result in jail time. The judge said Trump was not exempt from contempt sanctions just because he's a former or future president, that the court would jail him if necessary to enforce its orders. So, we have multiple formal judicial findings that Trump made false statements entered into the official record with evidence and legal conclusions supporting them. And it's not just Merchant. In the New York civil fraud case, Judge Arthur Engoron made similar findings. He determined that Trump Organization financial statements were fraudulent, that valuations were inflated, that representations to banks and insurers were false. Engoron's ruling went through specific claims about property values, square footage, asset valuations, and found them materially false. The judge documented the lies in his written decision. That's a judge destroying lies one by one in the sense that the ruling methodically establishes which statements were false and why. Federal judges reviewing Trump administration arguments have used even harsher language. One judge said administration claims about emergency authority were completely untethered to reality. That's devastating. A federal judge saying your arguments have no connection to reality means you're not just wrong, you're making things up. Other judges have accused Trump administration lawyers of misleading courts, of making representations that turned out to be false, of ignoring judicial commands. CNN and other outlets have documented this pattern. In January 2026, multiple federal judges expressed similar concerns about credibility, saying they can't trust representations from Trump's Justice Department. This is extraordinary. Federal judges usually defer to government lawyers. They assume DOJ attorneys are honest and operating in good faith. But Trump's administration has so damaged that trust that judges are publicly questioning whether they can believe what government lawyers tell them. The Conversation published analysis from a former federal judge explaining why this credibility loss is so significant. When judges don't trust you, everything becomes harder. Your arguments get more scrutiny. Your claims require more proof. Your requests for favorable treatment get denied, and the credibility damage is cumulative. Each judge who finds false statements makes the next judge more skeptical. Each contempt finding makes future courts less likely to give Trump the benefit of the doubt. Each harsh ruling about untethered to reality arguments makes all of Trump's legal positions weaker. Now here's where we need to talk about how these viral videos present this pattern. They take these real scattered moments, merchant correcting Trump on gag orders, contempt findings describing incendiary untruths, judges calling arguments untethered to reality, and they construct dramatic narratives. The videos describe courtroom scenes where a judge goes through Trump's claims methodically. Lie number 1, false. Here's the evidence. Lie number 2, also false. Here's why. They create a sense of systematic dismantling happening in real time in front of a stunned courtroom. This is dramatization of real events. The underlying facts are true. Judges have found Trump's statements false, but the presentation is more theatrical than the actual court proceedings. Real contempt orders are dry legal documents. Real judicial corrections happen in technical language during routine proceedings. The videos amp up the drama with words like brutal and destroys and one by one. They describe lawyers scrambling in the courtroom silent. They create emotional intensity beyond what court transcripts show. Some of this serves a legitimate purpose. Taking dry legal findings and explaining their significance in engaging ways helps people understand that yes, judges have formally found Trump lied. That's valuable. But when the dramatization goes too far, when it creates the impression of a single devastating confrontation rather than an accumulating pattern, it can mislead. People might expect to find a specific hearing where this dramatic takedown occurred. When they can't find it, they might think the whole story is fake. The truth is, between dry court transcripts and theatrical drama, judges have called Trump out repeatedly. The language is sometimes harsh. The findings are significant, but it happens in the grinding normal operation of courts, not in single made-for-TV moments. Understanding this helps you evaluate the significance. The accumulating record of judicial findings that Trump lies is huge. It undermines all his legal defenses. It makes conviction easier. It gives political opponents ammunition. But it's not one killer moment that ended everything. It's death by 1,000 cuts. Each judicial finding of dishonesty is another cut. Eventually, the cumulative damage is devastating, even if no single moment was. This pattern shows deliberate dishonesty, not just mistakes. Trump claimed the gag order prevented testimony when it didn't. He violated court orders repeatedly, even after being warned and fined. He made statements judges found were incendiary untruths designed to attack witnesses. This isn't confusion or mistakes. It's knowing dishonesty. And judges recognize the difference. When Judge Merchan corrected Trump multiple times on the same false claim, the judge knew Trump understood but chose to keep lying. That deliberateness makes the credibility damage worse. Mistakes can be forgiven. Deliberate lies destroy trust permanently. And judges are documenting that Trump deliberately lies, not just that he's sometimes wrong. These judicial findings also create ammunition for prosecution and political opposition. Every time a judge formally finds Trump made false statements, that becomes evidence prosecutors can use. It establishes that Trump has a history of dishonesty. It makes juries more likely to believe he lied in the current case, too. Democrats will use these findings politically. They'll cite judges calling Trump's statements untruths. They'll reference courts finding fraud. They'll point to credibility problems even conservative judges have noted. All of that becomes campaign messaging. And it's hard to counter because it's not partisan attacks, it's judicial findings. When Judge Merchant says Trump's statements were incendiary untruths, that's a formal legal determination, not a political opinion. When Judge Engoron finds fraud, that's after a trial with evidence, not campaign rhetoric. Trump's response to these judicial findings is telling. He doesn't engage with the substance. He doesn't admit mistakes or correct false statements. He doesn't modify behavior to comply with court orders. Instead, he attacks. He calls judges corrupt or biased. He claims persecution. He violates orders, then frames sanctions as proof of unfairness. He lies about what judges said, then complains when judges correct him. This response makes everything worse. It creates more contempt findings, it generates harsher judicial language, it reinforces the pattern of dishonesty judges are documenting, and it shows consciousness of guilt. If Trump's statements were honestly mistaken, he'd correct them when judges pointed out errors. Instead, he doubles down and attacks judges for calling him out. That suggests he knows he's lying and doesn't care. Understanding this real pattern helps maintain realistic expectations about accountability. If you think there was one brutal moment where a judge destroyed all of Trump's lies, you might expect immediate dramatic consequences. When they don't come, you get frustrated. But if you understand it's an accumulating pattern across cases, that each judicial finding adds to a growing record that eventually has significant impact, you can maintain pressure while being realistic about timelines. Real accountability through courts is slow. It requires building records. It involves multiple proceedings with many steps, but it can work. The accumulating judicial findings that Trump lies do matter. They do make conviction easier and defenses weaker, just not instantly, not in single dramatic moments, but through grinding accumulation of evidence that eventually becomes overwhelming. So, where does this leave us? Judges have actually called out Trump's lies repeatedly. Judge Merchant corrected false claims about gag orders and found incendiary untruths in contempt proceedings. Other judges found fraud, rejected untethered to reality arguments, and questioned administration credibility. This creates a real pattern of judicial findings documenting Trump's dishonesty. That pattern is significant and damaging. It undermines his legal defenses and political credibility. But it's not one brutal courtroom moment. It's accumulation across cases over time. Understanding that reality helps you evaluate both Trump's legal jeopardy and the viral content that dramatizes judicial findings. The truth is dramatic enough without exaggeration. Judges have formally found that Trump lies multiple times in multiple cases. That's devastating, even if it doesn't happen in single theatrical scenes. Anyway, that's the story. Viral videos show brutal moments of judges destroying Trump's lies, but the reality is more diffuse, a pattern of judicial findings across cases rather than one killer scene. Understanding the real pattern helps you grasp the actual significance and maintain realistic expectations about accountability. Wild times. If you made it this far, hit that subscribe button, ring the bell, and drop a comment letting me know what you think. Did you see these brutal courtroom moment videos? And did you understand they were dramatizing a real pattern rather than reporting a single scene? Let's talk about it.